Okay, everything's plugged in. We're good.
You should check and make sure the microphone is working on. Yes.
I think I saw it working when we were looking at it earlier.
It probably is. But
Yep, it's working. It's fine. Okay, guys, we're trying this again. Apparently the computer got unplugged while we were cleaning it because we were concerned about potential contamination. So, here I am. And Ian is going to be leaving the room because he is sick. And he just wanted to make sure that I got everything up and going so we could actually start our live show and get started. So, it's been a week. I'm going to light my peace candle just sort of to help and, keep me grounded. Hi, Taylor. I slept, so I guess that was good. We needed the rest. Ian has gotten sick from, we're not sure. He's got like respiratory stuff, bad headache, low-grade fever. So if he's still sick tomorrow, we're going to take him in and have him tested. Hopefully they'll let him get tested and find out. So yeah, we had a rather intense week this week. His sister showed up and on Tuesday morning at 5:30 a.m. So that kind of got us started on the whole insanity thing that happened after that. So it's been rather intense. I've never actually witnessed a psychotic break in person before and been in the house with it for a good whole day. I think she went to sleep around 4 o'clock in the afternoon and slept for 17 hours. So we had a bit of a break there before the next day and some other stuff that happened. But it's a terrible thing to witness. It's not fun to watch somebody go through that. And it's very frustrating and you sort of feel helpless. Because there's really nothing you can do to help in a situation like that. She's completely delusional, and she had a genuine experience, an encounter with nature just before she arrived at our house. And I think that's what actually pulled her to our house. She was sleeping outside on the ground in the woods somewhere, and a doe actually walked up to her and touched noses with her. And that started this entire delusional state where her interpretation of what happened to her was that the doe was there to tell her that her children were dead and everyone was dead. And so that's kind of how it got started when she arrived. And it was impossible, really, to change the narrative that she came into the door with. Hi. And yeah, so it was an interesting learning experience on a lot of levels. Her complete, like the shattering of the delusion that she had meeting with potential reality of her daughter not being dead, kind of created this energetic confluence of agitation, and that just towards the end of the whole thing, we were setting up a video chat with her daughter so she could actually see her and know it was her daughter and that she wasn't dead. And that's when the last explosion took place, when these two world views were about ready to collide. One, her daughter was dead, and then the reality that her daughter wasn't dead, and the inability to accept the truth just sort of exploded all over the place. So it was interesting from a psychic point of view as well, just all that stuff going on. And I did learn after witnessing this that I'm definitely sane. And trying to understand, like, how can you tell you're not delusional, especially since we work with, um, psychic abilities, and sometimes we hear voices or we see things like, energy coming out of our hands, the colors of other people's auras, and that kind of stuff. Good evening, Fatima. And so it's like, how can you tell whether or not you're grounded and you're not actually flying off into total insanity? And my conclusion after witnessing the event is that if you're willing to evaluate what's happening to you, if you're willing to look at it and change your perception of what's going on based on information that comes to you, then you're not having a psychotic break and you're not completely delusional. Because someone who's in that state, that can't, you won't allow that to happen. And so it's sort of a strange thing. I did a video earlier on when I was psychotic for a period of time, and so yeah, so this definitely had some memory flashes for me for when I was hallucinating and having difficulty encountering reality and other people. That was one of the things that was really clear when this was going on, was that she had no real feeling that anyone else was in the universe. Everything was just so internalized. Okay, so MT says, I finally bought the Element Encyclopedia 5,000 Spells. Thank you so much for your recommendation. Yeah. That's a fun book to look through. You have to be careful because, there's a lot of things in there that I would personally consider unethical, but it's your choice to decide what to do with them. And like with everything, when it comes to magic and your abilities and what you're trying to do, it's important to kind of look at and evaluate what you perceive as the potential consequences of your actions, just like anything, driving down the street, turning, looking for traffic, it's the same kind of process for sure. So, hi, Devil Blues. Nice to see you this lovely Sunday. How was your week like? Well, I've been talking about that since I got started, and it was a very not so great week with a psychotic break family member. So there's that. Um, Even with all that stuff, well, at this point, we're not sure if we can let her back in our house because the yelling and the screaming, she thought that our car was going to blow up when we tried taking her to the hospital. And then she thought the car was trying to kill her when we were taking her back home because she wouldn't get out of the car. She was just all over the place, and there was just no way to actually communicate with her. All of that was just massive craziness, serious crazy stuff going on. So we think this is where Ian got sick, though, because she was screaming in his face for a period of time before she left and then came back on Tuesday afternoon and then went to sleep for 17 hours. And she had a sore throat when she came back. I assumed at the time it was from all the screaming, but now that Ian has a sore throat, we're wondering if maybe she was actually sick and we didn't know it. And she hasn't been back since Tuesday afternoon, or Wednesday afternoon. She left to go look around and check things out and then hasn't come back. So family stuff can be difficult, trying to figure out what you can and cannot do and boundaries and figuring out what these boundaries were like. Thank you. Yeah, this is sort of my version of my medicine bag at this point. It's a Tibetan prayer box. And it has this nice opening in the back. So inside of it, I put all of my stones that I use for protecting myself from whatever might be coming at me emotionally and psychically and so forth. So I took the prayer flag that was in this out and put that on my altar underneath my Lakshmi statue on top of my Garuda statue. So they're quite happy together. And then this is a piece of kyanite my daughter gave me, sprayed with titanium, so it makes that nice rainbow kind of hue to it. And of course, my usual, at this point, always on me, tiger eye. I've been sleeping in it. It's just become, like, at the moment, for now, it's becoming my main protective thing. All right, so Devil Blue said, I'm really sorry. That sounds challenging, sending prayers so that things get better. Yeah, it is extremely challenging. There's no doubt about it. I managed to stay calm and grounded throughout the whole thing, but that in itself was very exhausting. I had to really work at maintaining and just sort of staying a calm center so I wasn't adding to the crazy whatever that was going on. So Fatima says, I've been reading a book called Backwoods Shamanism. It's about Appalachia, folk magic, hoodoo. It's interesting. I bet it is interesting. I don't know too much about the Appalachian folk magic, but there's a lot of different kinds of magic out there, different traditions that people brought with them from different places or that sort of grew up around them when they were there. So, thank you, Devil. I'm trying to definitely stay safe. Um, in even in the midst of all of this, however, with the craziness, I mean, we had the mental health crisis team over here twice on Tuesday, and I learned a lot about what can and can't be done in our state to help someone who's in a state like this. But like I said, learning I wasn't crazy was sort of refreshing. I was like, yeah, I'm really grounded, even if I see all kinds of crazy things. And I had one of my seeing something unusual, I think 2 nights after she left, like Thursday night maybe. And I was playing with a piece of bismuth, actually. It's a little bitty piece of bismuth. I don't know if you'll be able to see it or not, but there it is. And I was just kind of playing around with it. I had like the dim lights on, just a little bit of light. And I was playing with the aura around it because I can see energy easier in that half light. And it sort of felt like a caterpillar, like little strings, like a fuzzy kind of caterpillar type. I guess those are mostly moths, not actual, butterfly larvae. But I could feel the energy coming out of it, and I tried to see if I could find a spot that my energy connected to its energy, and I felt like this pull, sort of like a magnetic pull almost, and I could really feel the energy in there, and I started pulling on it, see if I could pull it out, and then all of a sudden I moved my hand, and my hand was an after image of my hand, but it was emerald green, the whole thing, my fingers and everything. It was just like the most amazing thing I've seen with my eyes open. I usually see that kind of stuff when I close my eyes. That started like a year or so ago, really vividly. Actually, it's probably been a couple of years, but it seems to have increased where when I close my eyes and getting ready to go to sleep, if I relax and just start looking kind of inside my head, all of a sudden I'll start to see colors come out and whatnot. And they've become quite vivid, all sorts of wonderful colors. But to see my whole hand floating there in space with this vivid green energy, so I'm thinking that's probably my aura, and certainly that's one of the colors a lot of people have seen around me, that green is my main aura color, which would make sense between, teaching and healing. That's sort of, that spectrum is kind of involved in that, at least according to the literature. But it was interesting for sure. So the other night I experimented with another stone. Actually, it was this one, a piece of Larimar. I love Larimar. I think that stuff is wonderful. It sort of makes you feel kind of happy. It's like a happy rock or something. And I saw violet energy coming off of this rather than the green energy, although there was some green energy mixed in here and there, maybe from me. So that was kind of interesting. So I brought that in just to sort of, I don't know, helped me feel a little bit better. That's why I got my peace candle going. So let's see. April says, I spend a lot of time in cemeteries documenting them, taking photos, enjoying the serenity and the critters that pop up out to say hello. In June, I came across the grave of a man that caught my eye. I felt compelled when I left the cemetery to find out all I could about him. This isn't an ordinary occurrence. I normally honor the dead, but don't think much about them once I have left the cemetery. I think I am picking up on some subtle energies and I feel a connection to the spirit. When did you start communicating with spirits, and do you have any advice? um, my green arm, my dream arm was green, yes. That's a different story, though. And it wasn't as nice a green. So, when it comes to communicating with the deceased, then the I started encountering spirits when I was really little. At first, they weren't really human spirits. I saw my guardian angels. I saw Moida, my personal guardian spirit. I saw other angels. I saw very, little people, nature spirits. My first main encounter was with a group of shadow things that my brother was being harassed by, but human spirits came quite a bit later, and I encountered them in some of the places where I lived. I lived with a ghost up in Regina, Saskatchewan. And that one, it was just sort of, he was a member of our household. He didn't do anything bad, so I wasn't worried about him. And I didn't know how to cross him over, so he just kind of hung out with us, and we hung out with him. And I saw him a few times. He liked to walk back and forth, make really great stepping sounds across the floor upstairs, and turn the light off and on in the bathroom. But so that was entertaining, but there was no uh, communication in the sense that you might be speaking about. So it was, I'm trying to think. When I learned how to open up the portal between the worlds, then I knew I could help them. So I guess I really didn't do too much, just sort of saw them or what have you here and there, up until that point. And when I went to Texas and I opened up a portal. There were 14 of us that put all of our energy together to pierce the veil between the worlds and open up this portal, so that this entire, I guess, a hunting party or warrior party, war party of Native Americans that got killed on the land, they all sort of crossed at the same time. And after I did that, then I gained the ability to just sort of open up that portal whenever I needed to. And then I really started doing more work with human spirits, and helping them to get to the other side, and developing my empathy so I could feel what they felt and understand them. I had an interesting encounter in a local uh, theater kind of thing. My granddaughter was able to hear what they were saying, and I don't necessarily hear them like a voice. I see what they're saying. I see it as pictures and feelings coming at me. And so then I respond with my voice out loud. And it was interesting when we finished with that particular thing, and my granddaughter was in the car with me, and she asked me if it was normal to hear what they said. And I said, well, did what you hear make sense with what I said? And she says, well, yeah. I said, well, then clearly it's normal for you to be able to hear what they say. So there you go. So that was interesting. It's like everyone has somewhat different abilities and have different ways of communicating. And sometimes attraction to a specific spirit, like the one you're talking about in the cemetery, it could be an interesting rabbit hole to go down and see what comes out of it. But just remember to remember that you're in charge and in control, and boundaries with the dead are actually even more important than they are with the living. So you have to make sure that you maintain your boundaries when you're going through that and exploring it. Whenever you're dealing with spirits and the other types of spirits, personal boundaries and psychic boundaries are really vital. And if you don't have them, then you can get into like possession or influence or overshadowing, or you know, all kinds of things can start happening in your own head, and then you can get lost in an alternate sort of potential reality that isn't real. So just keep that in mind as you explore. And if you have any questions, if something comes up, definitely send me an email and let me know, and we can talk about it. Yeah, I think I answered Burley's. Yes, the dream. It was the dream arm, and it was green, but not a nice green. So Devil Blue says, "Wow, that is truly astounding. You are really gifted and definitely not crazy. I wish I could have similar sight like you. Maybe in time I will. Can you share any advice on how to see auras?" So, okay, auras. I think the easiest way to start seeing them is in that kind of half light. You want to have a background. If you're doing it with somebody else, it's probably, you can practice with somebody and get feedback and so forth. But if you can have a background that is sort of a neutral color, I have a hard time with white as a background because on white, thought forms pop up and I see all sorts of other things. So I like sort of a darker, but not dark, just kind of an average neutral tone, and with the lights really low or just in candlelight kind of thing. And then you gaze. The idea is if you're trying to look right at the person, you're not going to see anything because then your eyes focus and your brain focuses on what your eyes are seeing when you hone in. So it's easier to see energy when you're looking past it rather than at it. So like you can start off with your hand and just put it up there and then try and look between the webs of your fingers and around the outside of your hand in that kind of setting and unfocus your eyes, because what you're looking for is something that's a lot more subtle than even the air that we're breathing. So it's like you're trying to see what's behind air. It's hard to describe. But the more you practice that, in the beginning, you usually see kind of like a gray thickening, like the air will look thicker right at the edges of your hand and your fingers. And when you get that air looks thicker, it's like this is not quite the same as like it is like a few inches away. Then you know that you're starting to get that right relaxation of your eye muscles so that you can see better. And then, just let yourself look and practice that. And apparently, eventually, you might see your own green hand like I did. That is the first time that's happened. So who knows how long this takes? And, everybody does it at a different rate. And it's nice it's happening without any drugs. So I can be in control of what's going on. Thank you. I appreciate that you like my style. And I'm glad that that helps with an explanation. I mean, it's a real, when we're dealing with things that are subtle like that, trying to figure out ways to explain things that resonate, especially when we're trying to figure out how to do something, that's a challenge in and of itself. So yeah, when I had my own psychotic episode, it started from a bad acid trip. It was laced with something, and I'm pretty sure it was laced with belladonna. Mine was all about internal processes that were happening, and I got stuck in remembering my deaths, the in-between states. Like I remembered not the life I had, but the after I died, what process I went through. And I did that over and over and over and over and over again, which was very confusing. And my personal guardian, Moida, was there, and she helped quite a bit, and I was glad of that, because although I yelled at her a number of times, because she would say, "This is just a memory, you've already survived it," nothing here can hurt you. I'm like, yeah, that's easy for you to say, standing over there on the other side of all these creatures running around trying to eat me alive. What the hell is wrong with you? Yeah. She's like, stay calm. I'm like, yeah, right. But it was very disorienting, and I had to make a conscious decision to come back. I mean, at the beginning part of it, I couldn't eat things. If I looked at anything, it was crawling with creatures and icky stuff. Everything smelled bad, like rotten. And the whole world was just covered with this icky, horrible creature things climbing on them, just messing everything up, trees, everything. And I remember deciding I needed to eat, that was important, that eating, if I didn't eat, then I would not be here for long, and forcing myself to eat food, even though it had that funny smell, and remind myself that I used to like that food, and there was a memory in my body of what that food tasted like and what it smelled like, and I was getting wrong information, and I couldn't base my decisions upon that. I had to go back in time and remember things. And I remember sitting on a hillside looking at a tree, and the leaves of the tree were just all covered with these icky creatures, climbing all over it. And I thought, no, I need to look at the tree, the actual leaves of the tree, and see the tree for what it is, the beauty of the tree, the green of it, the live of it. And I sort of forced those images back down, so I could see the tree. And so being here was the thing that saved me, I would say. And some unknown assistance or unique way my brain is structured that allowed me to have these different viewpoints of what was going on, so I wasn't completely stuck in the delusional state that I expressed to everyone else. And I'm sure people definitely thought I was crazy talking to cans and grocery stores and yelling at them because they kept wanting to have more keys, and I didn't have any keys left. I kept telling them that. That was the thing that kept coming up. After every death, they wanted to know what was the key to life, and I would come up with a reason. What had I learned? What was my key? And then they would argue with me about that, if that was a valid key or not. So, yeah, so I was pretty annoyed at that point. But it's not like the experience was not real in the sense that it wasn't real things that had happened in my own mind. It was like my subconscious had just sort of spewed outward into reality and covered it up. And then I had to pick through it and figure out what exactly I would accept, what was real and what wasn't real, and make a conscious decision. So I'm lucky. I have a very odd mind when it comes to that kind of thing. I've always been able to have a part of me sort of split off in the middle of a crisis. Like one time, I was given some medication to take. They were going to check my gallbladder, and this was before they had the more mild stuff that you used in order to clean yourself out, like before a colonoscopy or whatever. And this stuff was very, very, very intense stuff. And I was by myself, and I started the cramping, and everything started around midnight, I think, or pretty close to it. And before that part started, I started feeling extremely depressed. And I thought, if I had had the means, I might have done myself in. And my voice came out, the little me overviewer or what have you popped out and said, this is what's happening. You're having this reaction because of the chemical that you took into your body. What you need to do is not be by yourself. You need to go upstairs to the neighbor's house, to their apartment, tell them what's happening. And so I did. I took myself out of the house and went up the stairs and talked to the woman who lived upstairs, and she had had the same thing happen to her, so then I knew it wasn't just me. And so, it's like a lot of times like that, when there's something going on, I have this part of me that sort of just splits off and looks at the situation from a distance, and then can give me valid information to keep me safe. And it saved my life on more than one occasion, especially with my first husband. He was trying to find a reason to kill me at the time. And that inner voice, outer view, or whatever, popped in and told me exactly what to do, and in this case, what not to do. And yeah, that was kind of intense, to say the least. So, in the end, it's all, I guess, it felt like it was all up to me to decide how that was going to go. And I know it's not easy for a lot of people because it can get confusing. And I think that the reason for having other people around, people you can talk to, is to help get a reality check on certain things, because it's easy to go down a rabbit hole, especially when you're studying magic, because there's a lot of rabbit holes out there. And you can start off sort of grounded and centered and then end up somewhere, bam, there you are. And like, does this really have any reason to exist? Is it helpful or not? So you have to sort of figure that out for yourself. All right, let's see. You're welcome, Devil. Any tips on quit smoking? I don't never smoked, so I don't have that problem. But my husband did before I met him, and basically he said with him it was an act of will. He decided he didn't want to be controlled by it anymore, and it made him mad, and that's what he used. But there's lots of other things that are out there, and I don't have experience. So Devil says, wow, so intriguing how that works. Why did it activate so much pain and disillusionment, or is that how acid works? Well, the acid, I think, just unlocked a bunch of stuff that was in there, considering my childhood. If you remember the horror that was my childhood, being tortured does not really seem like much of a far stretch as a good image for what I went through in reality. So Desideratum says, hi there, is there a symbol I could use on a wreath or emblem for my front door that welcomes good-natured fae? A safe haven sign. I have no idea. They haven't shown me one. I think it's an energetic thing that they feel comfortable with you or they don't. They feel welcome or they don't. So I don't know if that's I can't think I can say much on that. P.S. Do you sew? Anything you can tell us about magic and fabric arts? Yes, and I do a lot of magic with my craft. Like I just finished making a piece for someone that's going to be a representation of their power animal. And definitely when I'm making that kind of stuff, I want to be in the right frame of mind so that the energy that it has is going to be there. But speaking of crafts, I brought these in. Let's see, hopefully it's not going to like glow too much. But we were talking about making witches' balls last week. And so I found some clear ornaments for witches' balls. So we're going to do this video. So now's the time to get your clear crystal or clear glass ornaments so that you can make your own witches' balls. So that'll be a project we have in the future for crafts. I've certainly done stuff with like sachets, protective sachets and that kind of thing. And poppets. I've made plenty of poppets, and that would be magical sewing, I would assume. I'm glad I prevailed, yes. So April says, that makes sense. I definitely feel some subtle communication from him. That must be the guy in the cemetery. But so far it's been gentle and just made me curious about how I can help him. Hearing about your experiences is always helpful. Hi, Amelia. And I'm glad it's helpful. Devil says, I see, I'm really sorry, but glad you pulled yourself out of it and are all the more stronger and wiser now to share your knowledge with us. Thank you. Thank you. And I'm glad I survived it as well. I still wonder how I did it, but I did. So I'm good. I'm good as far as that goes. So Desideratum also wanted to ask if you had any experience with the level of loss of elementals, nature spirits during the wildfires. How do they deal with death? Well, they know when it's coming, and they're not happy about it, but it's part of the natural cycle. Any natural disaster is going to have devastation. whether it's started by people or not, and they have their work cut out for them. But a fire, there's certain trees that will not reproduce without a fire, especially here in the Pacific Northwest, like the redwood is one of those trees. And after a fire, is like it creates all that carbon and renews the soil. Not that we want it on that level, obviously, but then they're going to be working on that and then bringing in new types of plants and new energy into the area. So you end up with different field plants, and open field from after a fire is going to bring in deer and all sorts of other smaller animals that can, you know, hide and feed on those. And so the world adapts to the environment and starts to fill it in with whatever's appropriate for that. They just have to accept it, and so they don't feel the way we feel about things. It's just like this is just what happened, and so it's not like they're going to be yelling at us for it. Generally speaking, unless you have a whole forest that's getting mad, that's a whole different issue. But all right, yay, witches balls, yes. I'm excited to make them too. What is the supply list for the witch's ball? So thread, different colored thread, different lengths of thread. So if you have like a sewing kit somewhere that's got a bunch of thread in it, is one of the things you can use. One of them was talking about using tinsel, but I don't like that one in particular because tinsel seems, I mean, it would be shiny and everything else, but it doesn't seem traditional in the sense that only now, in this century, or I guess the 20th century or whatever, did we have tinsel. So I think you can use needles, and if you want to paint, silver paint for sure, because you want to get some reflection on the inside of the ball, but you can use other colors with it. So you can just make strings of colors inside the ball. So if you have any craft paint around, have that with you for when we make them. You got to have the ball, of course. And it doesn't have to be very super elaborate. You can put herbs in it if you want to. I have like sage and rosemary growing in my garden, so I'll probably